Dave and I have been talking about the opt-out movement where parents nationwide are opting out of the high-stakes testing that is so prevalent in our country. And there is a related movement, and I would call it the opt-out of Common Core movement. States like Indiana have now officially opted out of giving students in their state the Common Core assessment, and Oklahoma is expected to follow suit. Common Core was developed really in isolation. I know that the advocates of it will say it was an open process, it wasn't behind closed doors, but the fact is there were never any public hearings. There was never any comment period where the public could comment on the Common Core, and most people probably still don't necessarily know what the Common Core is, but 2 years ago almost no one had heard of it. And yet next year, 2015, is when students in Arizona will be assessed on the Common Core standards. Arizona has been at risk of being one of the states that opts out of this test. There has been a very vocal, very organized movement against it. The business community, many of whom belong to associations that have been behind the drafting of the Common Core, have stuck up for it, and so far it has survived in Arizona. But what's happening as more scrutiny comes to the Common Core, we're learning more and more about how it actually came together, and it really was done behind closed doors, and we're learning now who helped finance that. There was some interesting data that was released recently about the Gates Foundation. This is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, very big in the education reform movement. And it turns out that they have financed the Common Core initiative to the tune of $280 million. $280 million. $154 million of that was used just to draft the Common Core standards. And this, I think, along with many other issues, raises the point as to whether or not we are in the business now of allowing the business community and the billionaire boys club, as I call them, to basically direct education policy in the United States. When you're thinking about, where should these initiatives be coming from? Well, number one, they should be coming from educators, period. Number two, there should be a lot of input from people at the ground level, at the state level, and this shouldn't be coming from upon high and then basically forced down our throats, which is in essence what happened with President Obama's Race to the Top program. At a very, very dire time for education in our nation during the height of the recession, when school budgets were being slashed, teachers were being cut, classrooms were being supersized. The government, the Obama administration, dangled out this carrot saying, if you adopt the Common Core as your state curriculum and give this new assessment, then you will be eligible. You won't even receive necessarily, but you will be eligible to apply for these dollars to basically stem the tide of these massive budget cuts that were going on. So what were states going to do? Of course they applied for Race to the Top, as Arizona did. Did Arizona receive one of the Race to the Top grants? No. So Arizona is now implementing a test that has not been properly funded, that very well could be setting our children up to fail and our educators up to fail, at the same time that we're cutting funding at the same time that we are raising standards, and it's unproven. In states like New York, early adopters of the Common Core assessment, the results have been a disaster. And I think that as this goes into effect, we could see more and more states decide to opt out of this entire movement. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think that education is a moving target, and I think everything has got to constantly be changing and adjusted and worked with. And the way the Common Core is put together, as you've said, has more to do with somebody imposing it from on top and saying, these are the rules. These are the 10 Commandments. This is the Bible of education, and it's fixed. The testing does more of that. it really concerns me, as you said, about the Billionaire Boys Club and I hate to use this term, but it's getting more and more correct, the business of education, because education is becoming more of a profit-based business with business people basically seeding it. And it really concerns me as a teacher with the idea that I would be sitting in a classroom and have these things imposed on me with tests coming from on high. And I know, to be honest, talking to teachers and administrators, that they feel this pressure more than ever before. Teachers are saying, I'm not happy with my job.
Well, and we see a huge number of teachers leaving the profession, especially in Arizona, and also principals now leaving the profession as well, because their jobs, whether they keep their jobs or not, are now directly tied to test scores. Right now it's AIMS, and then in the future it will be the Common Core, which they had no part in drafting. We haven't even given them the proper resources to be able to properly implement this new exam if you thought it was a good idea to begin with. And I thought Diane Ravitch was in an excellent interview on the Bill Moyers program, and I recommend anyone who hasn't viewed that to go online and watch her. And he asked her, what keeps you going? Because you're senior citizen like he is, like Bill Moyers is, and how do you keep fighting this fight? And she said, well, nothing makes me more upset than seeing the billionaires out there, telling teachers how to do their job and basically hammering them over the head if they don't think they're doing it properly. And I think Common Core, unfortunately, as we see, was put together in large part with financing from the Billionaire Boys Club. And I think that the scrutiny that it's now receiving, although some of it a little wingnutty on the far right, I think that there are some legitimate points that are being raised, especially about how it was conceived and how it's been rolled out.
Well, I'm happy to make a certain kind of a temporary pact with the right wing about their concerns, some of which are legitimate, some of which go out on the tinfoil hat area, but they and people like us are very concerned about this top-down and very rigid format that we've been handed.
Great.